No entrevistas. No sé si voy a subir este video, obviamente si lo están viendo es porque sí lo subí, así que si lo están viendo, pues suscríbanse y denle like por favor, porque andamos enfermitos y estamos aquí dándole. Han salido estas nuevas noticias, estas nuevas entrevistas por parte de Screen Rant. La semana pasada salieron. Apenas las vamos a reaccionar. El diseñador de producción, Richard Bridgland, nos va a hablar sobre live action de One Piece, cómo fue trabajar. Vamos a ver qué detallitos encontramos interesantes y bueno, espero que la disfruten.
Single ship asset that we had and put them in the water and we moved them around for different scenes and everything so that when we're looking off we would minimize the amount of visual effects we use to extend the background so that all the world around them felt real and credible and believable.
I am very excited to talk with you about the live action One Piece. It was quite the blast from start to finish. And as some
Que este muchacho fue el mismo que le hizo la entrevista al director de los primeros dos capítulos, Mark Jobs. Estuvo muy interesante también esa entrevista, la cual ya está en
someone
este
who
canal.
was not familiar with the source material prior, it's gotten me to dive into the anime now, and that's been a lot of
That's
fun.
great. That's great.
Now, the One Piece property is one of the most iconic around the world. Were you familiar with it prior to being approached for the show?
Eso siempre
I
les
can't lie
preguntan,
to
¿eh?
you. I was not. I'm the wrong demographic, and but luckily my kids knew all about it because when they first approached me about it, I went and said to them, "So, what do you know about this manga called One Piece?" And they just looked at me and they went, "Oh my God, everybody knows One Piece." Like that.
Me encanta porque siempre los hijos de estos güeyes, ya vieron también la entrevista con la directora de los otros de los otros dos episodios del 3 y el 4. Igual sus hijos ya sabían todo de One Piece, güey. O sea, me encanta porque estos güeyes, no saben nada y llegan con sus hijos y, oye, ¿qué crees que me ofrecieron algo para trabajar en One Piece? Y los hijos de, ¡ah! Agárralo, agárralo.
So that was great. And then since then I've just discovered what a huge fan base there is for this. It was like half of my art department were all huge fans, and to work on the show for them was like the dream job, to be doing the translation into live action for the manga. So it was huge. I got to say, one of the things about not being a fan prior, because I've been asked this question before, but and I knew it would be coming up. But I think actually it helped a lot to come to it fresh because I had no preconceptions about it, and so when I was discovering the characters, it was like when the fans discover the characters and the world and everything for the first time, and
Claro.
and so I didn't have any kind of biases towards certain characters or anything like that, and so I could kind of come to it with fresh eyes. So I think that helped as well.
So then, what was it
Fíjense
like?
que eso es bien
Because I'm sure you
importante, ¿eh? Esa
you
parte que
did.
dice
But
no
what was it
tener
like diving into the
prejuicios.
manga and the anime for the research and really preparing that? I mean, did you only lightly touch upon it while trying to envision your own world, or did you really do as much research as possible to really be able to bring this to life?
When you have a property that is so loved by so many fans, you have to honor it and you have to honor the source material. So we did a huge amount of research into kind of every aspect of it. And we had a number of great resources. So I didn't look at the anime. The
¿Cómo
anime
que
was
viste
already
One
an
Piece?
interpretation of the original material. So I went straight back to the manga to look. I didn't read the manga through for this whole story arc. I really looked at the bits that were relevant to our script,
Ajá.
because partly because I kind of, we were telling a particular story, it isn't everything in that whole story arc. We did, the writers did change parts of the story around just to make like a TV adaptation kind of flow better and everything, which will be different to the manga. It's a different medium. And then
Sí,
had some great resources like Oda, has this book, The Rubaru, that has all of the original inspirations for a lot of the settings in the manga. So, for instance, in Logtown, his inspiration was Florence, and he's quite open about these things. And part of it is like, One Piece takes you on a journey kind of throughout the world, but but seen through kind of the Oda's lens of One Piece kind of thing. So that was super useful to be able to actually kind of look at where the original inspirations came from, and then kind of build on those from there. In Logtown, for instance, going into the manga, he actually references a couple of real stores in Florence. So I felt duty bound to reference the same stores. We have those store signs in there. It looks different, but we wanted to put those Easter eggs in so that people knew we were paying
sí,
attention.
I love that. This is,
eso
I
es
mean,
importante.
everybody I've talked to has talked about how many, or their desire to make this just right for Oda as well as for fans, and sprinkle those Easter eggs in. So I love that. And so you mentioned this.
Bueno, ¿qué puedo opinar? Es un gran consejo, netamita. Lo que pasa es que tampoco quiero que se hagan tan largos porque pues son entrevistas muy largas. Creo que está bien interesante el hecho, por ejemplo, ellos están totalmente en blanco, decía lo de los prejuicios, eso me parece bien, bien, bien importante. El que ellos vengan totalmente vírgenes al mundo de One Piece, no les hace como crear, a veces hay gente que dice, es que a mí me gusta Zoro y Sanji no me cae, o a mí me gusta Sanji y Zoro no me cae. Creo que eso es bien importante que no los tengan, porque a lo mejor sus hijos que ya conocen la obra, ellos sí tienen esos prejuicios, lógicamente, como todo fan de One Piece. Creo que el hecho de que ya sabían que Lockdown no iban a estar y vayan puesto esos easter eggs sobre Lockdown, aparte de ciertas cosas en los escenarios, en los pequeños detallitos que decíamos, ¿no? La conversación de Garp con Zeph, al comparar a Luffy con Gold Roger, cuando el primer platillo que presenta Sanji, o sea, hay muchas cositas bien, bien interesantes. También mencionaba lo abierto que es Soda, ¿no? Como para eso. Eso se me hace bien, bien importante y que creo que fue un factor, importantísimo y que se nota mucho para darle ese aire fresco que tiene esta adaptación de live action de One Piece.
Scripts a moment ago, and wanting to bring those in particular to life, and I'm curious if there was any one script of the 8 that you read and you were the most excited to help envision on screen.
I think it was always the next script. So,
Ok,
to be honest, because it was such a fabulous world to create, and the scale of it was so huge, and because it's a travel story, every 2 episodes you're moving on to a different part of the world. It was like doing 4 quite big feature films back to back. So it was, and we kind of had a joke in the art department. People would ask each other, like, or they'd say, I'm working on Baratier. I think this is my favorite set. And then about a month later, you'd walk in and they'd say, oh, I'm working on Kokiyashi Village. I think this is my favorite set. It was, and it was kind of the same with with the scripts as well. It just kept on giving, that we weren't sort of, but because we were just constantly moving on to new worlds, it was, the next one was always very exciting. I think the one, if you were going to ask me which episodes that I was most excited for the fans to see, I think I'd say the episodes in Syrup Village and Kaya's Mansion in particular. And the reason for that is
ellos querían que viéramos lo de la mansión de Cayo, o sea, esos fueron los que más le emocionaron. Y a mí me saca de onda porque a mí fueron los que como que siento que no me emocionaron tanto. O sea, tiene muchas cosas bien interesantes, estuvo bien trabajada mucha parte de la historia, ese tono como de terror, ¿no? De suspenso que le metieron ahí en la mansión. Estuvo chido, pero siento que de cuando lo ves en comparativa con los primeros, que ves la Shellstown, luego ves a la de Buggy, que para mí fue casi casi de lo mejor, ves el Barati, ves ves todo esto, ves Arlon Park. Yo creo que sí, el arco de Villa Shirup sí se quedó un poquito ahí como que, híjole, le faltó, como que siento que hay cosas como que pudo haber trabajado.
Is because in the manga you never go inside Kaya's mansion, but almost all of that takes place inside Kaya's mansion. So we had to create that, and that was a huge challenge because we didn't really have a lot to go on from the manga, the original source material, but we had to stay true to Oda's work and to One Piece. So it had to be true to the spirit of it. And the way I did that, which is the way I designed so many of the sets, is I told stories about the characters from based on what I knew about them from.
A ver si menciona, me gustaría que mencionara, bueno, no creo, pero me gustaría que alguien contara por qué se tomó la decisión de a lo mejor no meter a Django. Digo, o sea, dentro de lo que es la estructura de lo que es Villa Shirup en el arco de live action, ¿cómo hubiera entrado? O sea, yo creo que por eso lo quitaron, ¿no? O sea, como que la historia, ¿cómo vas a hacer que o sea, tenía que haber estado trabajando adentro, ¿no? Dentro de la mansión, para poder actuar como el hipnotizador. Pero ni siquiera eso. ¿Por qué se tomó esa decisión de no incluirlo como otro trabajador o cuál fue la intención?
Oda, from what I had seen in the mangas, from what one of our showrunners, Matt Owens, is a huge One Piece fan and a kind of a total geek about it. And he, whenever we had a question of would this be correct for the world, he was the one who either he knew or he would go and find out for us, because so he was great. But I just tell stories. So in Kaya's mansion, the story was her grandparents started the shipbuilding company there. Everybody from the East Blues to come and have their ships built. And so they had a sales room where they had like murals of ships that they had built on the wall, like a sales room. I figured that in the dining room, it ended up being covered in porcelain on the ceilings, the walls, everywhere, because the people who were buying the ships, they might not have had cash. They were pirates. They were stealing stuff. So instead of cash, they'd say, "Oh, I've got a big pile of fine porcelain in the hold. I'll pay for the ship that way." They decorated the dining room.
I love that thought process, and I mean,
Fíjate, fíjate, lo mismo te iba a decir, ese pensamiento, güey, de cómo hacer, güey, que funcione. O sea, aquí te está dando ese cómo piensan ellos, güey, cómo le dan la vuelta a ese tema para que, no se pierda la esencia de lo que es la historia de Kaya, de lo que se sabe de la Villa Shirup, ese arco de la Villa Shirup, y cómo lo vas acomodando, ¿no? Para que también concuerde con lo que tú quieres hacer, ¿no? Creo que está interesante esa parte.
I do love the way that this show tweaks that storyline to include more in the mansion and everything. It was really exciting to see. Now you mentioned the scale not too long ago, and you're right. I mean, the scale of everything in the show is just massive, whether it be the sets or the action or whatever it is. And I'm curious, what was then the most challenging set or well, I guess set to really put together to match the scale of
Se me hace que de aquí voy a sacar el título.
Matt, Steve, and Eiichiro's ambitions?
Well, there were a lot of them that were a challenge, I can tell you. I think the one single set that was probably the biggest challenge would be Baratier Restaurant. Because, first of all, it's a massive set. I think it was the single biggest set that we built. That ship with the giant fish head on it. And it had to.
Bienvenido, Dark Angel, ¿cómo estás?
Be in a tank that was, on our back lot and everything. Quite a shallow tank. And the big challenge was that we really wanted to minimize the amount of visual effects. This was quite old.
Fíjese que eso que dice, o sea, aquí dan despensa, no, padre. Fíjate que está bien chistoso porque si te vas a pensar, se supone que la cabeza del Barati era exactamente, ¿no? Este barco como de ataque, para defensa del Barati, y aquí lo transformaron como en un bar, ¿no? Es el bar del Barati.
Old-fashioned movie making. We wanted to build the sets so that the world, because we're translating from from a manga into live action, this world had to look real. All of these fans have spent years with this property. They've all got in their imagination their version of One Piece. So when we create it in the real world, it has to look real for them. We can't just do like a visual effects background, and however fantastic it looks, kind of hope people, will buy into it. It's like, no, it's got to have texture, it's got to have smell, it's got to have sculptures of One Piece things and Easter eggs, tucked away in it and everything that are real, and so that you actually really feel like you're in this parallel universe of One Piece. So this was a huge set that when you're outside it, you see off all the time, and you see into our back lots and our parking lots and the highway that's just over the hill over there. You see all of this. So we used every single ship asset that we had and put them in the water, and we moved them around for different scenes and everything, so that when we're looking off, we would minimize the amount of visual effects we use to extend the background, so that all the world around them felt, real and credible and believable.
I'm glad you took those efforts because yes.
Sí, o sea, al final era usar más utilería, crear sets más grandes para que pues al final ocupar menos dinero en esa parte del CGI. Lo que me gustó fue que combinaron lo convencional con el CGI, sí. Despensas del bienestar, así es.
The outside of obviously the devil fruit powers, this world feels very real, and so I'm glad your efforts paid off.
Great, glad to hear it.
We've discussed Oda a few times in this, and everybody that I've talked to, they've mentioned his involvement in the show is pretty well documented, it feels like at this point. But what was it like for you working with him? Did you get much interaction with him? And if so, how did it feel to really, collaborate with him to bring this to life?
I'll be honest, I didn't actually interact directly with Oda. So when we had, and I think he was content to allow us to do what we do best, which is the movie making. And once, I think because he was happy with the scripts, and then I sent my presentation of like most of the concepts to him, and he came back and gave us a thumbs up, and he said, yeah, no, this feels like my world. So and then from there, I think he was sort of content to let us carry on with that. Where we
más o menos contento, me encanta.
did go back to Oda was when we had certain questions that we couldn't either find the answer in the manga or in the kind of broader lore, other books that he's produced and everything. And there were some interesting ones. There were only a few, but they were big. They were quite a big deal. One was, my big question very early on was, does this world have electricity?
Hombre, mira, le hicieron preguntas bien interesantes, brother. O sea, esto lo he hablado con Dani en conversación así, de cómo Oda se basa mucho en los trabajos de Nikola Tesla, ¿no? Para lo que es la tecnología, la energía que usa este mundo de One Piece. Y esta pregunta me recordó ese momento total.
Because I knew that there was solar power in a later story arc that created electricity. But I needed electricity. We needed to light these sets. I needed to use different kinds of lights. We couldn't light everything by candle daylight, So it was a big issue at the time. And so we went to Oda and we said, Oda, what
cuídate que ataca.
What do you think about this? It's like, do you have electricity? Can we use solar power? And it actually took him by surprise because he was like, "Oh, I never really thought about this,"
No manches.
because why would you? It's a practical question. So, and he thought about it, and he came back to us. He said, "Yes, you can have electricity
Pues sí, güey, no. Qué chido.
in the world. Don't do it with cola power. That comes later in a later story arc. So let's not use it here. We'll use it later on. So maybe in season 2, 3, I don't know, they'll
Energía solar. Ok, ya les anda levantando los pinches spoilers estos.
introduce the whole cola power of it. And he said, this is a really big deal, to say that there
Un culto. Ojo, está bien interesante esa parte.
is electricity in this world. It's like it's a new aspect to the world kind of thing. So that was one of the things. And whenever we had a question, it was generally a kind of a pretty fundamental one like that.
I love that because I myself, 30 episodes or so now into the anime. I know the anime is different from the manga, but regardless, like 30 episodes in, I myself was curious. I was like, oh yeah, I wonder if this world does have electricity or not. It's not very clear. And then obviously the neon sign in Child Luffy's bar sticks out right away.
Right.
In action. So I was like, huh. That is an interesting point, but yeah, I love that you even made Oda have to go back and think about that. That's awesome.
Sí, este cabrón hizo que Oda dudara de su propia obra, güey, no mames. Se rifó con esta pregunta, güey. Imagínate hacer dudar al propio Oda, güey, de su obra. De decirle, ¿hay electricidad? Y que se quede, ay, no sé, no pensé en eso.
Now you know the answer. Yeah.
Yeah, now I do. So for my final couple of questions, these are a little more big picture, but the live action anime genre is a very tricky one. It's one that's had a lot of misfires in throughout the years. And so I'm curious, when you were approached for this, if that
Ándale, Kyotaka, a eso se está refiriendo de lo que le mencionaba Oda, de lo del sueño de Vegapunk. Que era bien importante que sí, o sea, pues sí que haya electricidad porque es algo que se va a revelar más adelante, que increíblemente en el manga aún no sabemos qué es esa power, esa fuente de poder que está buscando. Bueno, ya no voy a decir nada.
was something that was in your mind and if that created any kind of reservations for you about joining the project.
No, it didn't. I mean, I'm aware of that. And whenever I've seen, let's not mention any names, but whenever I've seen shows that have had that and seen those misfires, I've also been very aware of why they didn't work. And for me, it's because they would fall in love with one aspect of the show, and it might be how amazing the world looks, and they kind of focus that. But really, I think what all these properties, the reason why people love them is they love the characters. They respond to what the characters are about, and then the world from of the characters is built around them. And so when I approached this, I went straight to the characters. I went to Luffy's character. I went to all of them, and it's like, okay, these are big bold characters. It's a big bold world and everything. And once you do that, then you're kind of on safe ground. And so
fíjate que eso como dice, ¿no? O sea, ¿por qué fracasaron otros live actions? Porque simplemente los hicieron por hacerlos. O sea, básicamente por eso. O sea, sí, se iba a hacer. Pero todos se acercaron a One Piece, a los personajes, se enamoraron, vieron el mundo, les encantó, fue extraordinario y se notó en lo que nos entregaron. El amor que le dedicaron al mundo de One Piece se nota en cada episodio de live action, la verdad.
It's things like the figurehead on the Going Merry. That absolutely encompasses Luffy's character. He's indomitable, he's courageous, and he's funny and laughs in the face of danger. So, you take the thing that's in the manga, if you made it in real life, it would look kind of goofy. but so I created a ram's head that was laughing, and and suddenly it worked, and it was like, yeah, this is the
No
spirit
mames
of
que se está riendo, güey. Yo pensé que estaba sufriendo de muerte en la cabeza de Merry.
Luffy in a figurehead. We changed the eyes so that they were the manga eyes, so that it actually, sort of looped back to the manga itself and felt more One Piece, not just like a ram's head figurehead, but actually felt like the One Piece one. And so, honored Oda's work in that way. But always it was with character, there was actually one of the early sets was one of the ones where it really, we really defined this thing where the character actually dictated the set. In Morgan's office, no one was expecting a set, the scale of the set that we built for Morgan's office. I know that Steve, one of our showrunners, he'd imagined it in his own head when he was writing it as like an office on a military base kind of thing. But again, you go into the character of of Morgan, and he's this over the top, narcissistic, loud,
Efectivamente.
self-aggrandizing, and he had to have an office that suited his character. Funnily enough, I based the whole idea of his desk being a long way from the door on the original Louis B. Mayer office, where which he had exactly the same thing to make everybody scared before they got to the desk, and there were steps up to it. The ceiling's really high. There's huge statues of Morgan. There's enormous portraits of Morgan, like winning in battle and everything, and that all came from his character. But it was also it was like really One Piece as well. And funnily enough, that's that moment when we designed that set sort of defined that feeling. So I think that's kind of where the approach that we took to One Piece, which sounds like it's paying off.
Well, that was.
Fíjate que eso me gustó, que le dieron mucha personalidad y le dieron como más trasfondo a personajes como Morgan, güey. O sea, Morgan se me hizo más interesante Morgan que el Morgan del anime, sinceramente.
Was actually going to be my very final question for you, was that the embargo dropped the other day, and so people like myself who have seen it are being able to finally talk about it now. And from what I've seen, the reactions are glowing. Have you had the chance to see any, and how are you feeling from seeing them?
Yeah, there was a big thing on YouTube with these two two people in the show, and what's really gratifying is that they were talking about it, and they were just enjoying everything, every aspect, the stories, the humor. I mean, because that's such an important thing, and not always easy to get right. And the storytelling as well, because we were very bold in the way that Mark Jobst, who was the producing director, who did the first two episodes, he established this style with these super wide lenses, which gives it that feel of the manga as well. And again, when I was designing the sets, I had to design the sets knowing we were going to be using super wide lenses quite often. So I had to design in the ceilings and everything, because we were going to see all of this. It's really, I have to say, we did go the extra mile to put in like all the Easter eggs, and there's so much stuff, if you look in the background, that is stuff that, you wouldn't expect to find. Look in the Baratier restaurant in the background, all the paintings there are landscapes of places in the One Piece world that Zeph.
Que ahí viene la isla de los animales raros donde está Gaimon, ¿no? En una de esas pinturas.
Has been to, or might have gone to, and we researched that, and we created all these portraits, and all of that. You don't really see it as part of the action, but we wanted to put in all those Easter eggs, and I think that level of detail that we put in and had so much fun doing as well. I think we were doing it to honor the imagination of the fans and honor Oda's work, and it sounds like it's paid off, so that's good.
I know it's paid off for me as someone who was new to the world and is now engrossed in it, and I can't wait for people to finally see it in a couple of days. So thank you so much for taking the time to chat and break
Bueno, hasta
down this
ahí,
world for me. I really do appreciate it.
hasta aquí llegó esta interesante entrevista al diseñador de producción Richard Bridgland de el live action de One Piece. Dime a ti qué te pareció. Toca temas muy interesantes. Ese de Oda, ese detallito con Oda. Wow, qué gran momento, ¿no? Qué gran momento. Pero bueno, deja tu like, suscríbete para más contenido y nos vemos en el siguiente videito. Chao, chao.